Yes, sir. Yes, sir. Yes, sir. Dr. Thunder,
Can
how's your audio
can
and how's my audio?
can you hear me?
I can
Can you
hear
hear
you.
me?
Can you hear me?
All right, great. I was having some weird settings over here, all the way up until the last minute. I can hear you. We're here,
Excellent, excellent,
ready
excellent,
to
excellent.
roll, just like just how we planned it.
Just exactly the way we planned it. Shout out to Nicer. Shout out to everyone in the house. And we are gonna get directly. If I can find my tongue, if my tongue works, if I can speak, we're getting directly into this. So very famous quote, right? Give me a lever long enough and a place to put it, and I can move the earth. Archimedes said that, demonstrating the power of leverage. Now, leverage is, for all intents and purposes, a force multiplier, right? It is a force multiplier. It's a beautiful way of getting things done. And this is getting ish done with I Conductor Thunder. So it makes sense that we'll be talking about leverage and how to use the giving of what people want and perhaps the withholding or the showing them of a possible future where you could perhaps take away that car, right, Dr. Thunder? I mean, the car was the leverage in the video that we watched the last time. And so, how did we get here? We got here by discussing the topic of objections because in all human interactions, life is filled with human interactions that are negotiations, basically. You have social negotiations, political negotiations, financial negotiations, negotiations for pay, price, relationship type negotiations, and so on and so forth. And in these negotiations, proposals are made and proposals are rejected. Objections are to be encountered, and so on and so forth. So, in talking about that, you then mentioned leverage, and it brought to my mind, and I would like to ask you to start this, just throw the ball over to you. Yes, leverage is important. Yes, life and social interactions have these particular dynamics, and leverage is a key way of navigating those. How about if I'm someone just starting out? I'm a young man, I'm just starting out. I have no leverage, right? I'm in that situation where I have no experience, but I need the job, but I can't get the job without the experience. But if I don't get the job, I don't get the experience. I have no leverage. I have nothing to leverage at this point. What do I do vis-a-vis leverage, Dr. Thunder, if I'm at level zero? Maybe I'm one of your students or something like that. What would you say to such a situation?
Yeah, there's a an episode of The Office where Dwight Schrute um, he comes empty-handed, or he has like a matchbook or something, and he the office is having a garage sale, and they're having it in the warehouse. And so he goes around systematically and he trades things that are insignificant, but finds a way to enhance their value in the way that he describes them for the particular need of the person he's talking to. So he he gets a half used candle. He trades the candle for a collection of books because the person still had some other books or something, and say, how can you read if you don't have light? Something like this. I'm probably messing some of this up. But the point is that he goes all the way from having like a match all the way uh to gaining the most valuable item at the sale, all by bartering, all by trading, all by having uh, a clever enough wit to be able to see that. Now, what ends up happening is because he's an idiot. Um, is that Jim convinces him? Can you still hear me? I know my camera froze. Um, Jim convinces him that uh, he has these magic beans, these and he plays a trick on him to make it appear like the beans keep reappearing by themselves or something. And so this piques Dwight's, uh, it piques his curiosity, and he just can't get the idea of that out of his mind. And so he ends up trading the most valuable thing for some worthless beans because
Hmm.
he had been convinced that they were magic beans. And then at the very end of the episode, it might even be after the credits had rolled. Sometimes they have those little short things at the very end. It's kind of like going to a movie and wait until after the credits are over for like a little teaser. Um, so, uh, so he had planted the seeds, and so then Jim waits until he goes away, and he comes out with three fully you know fully grown plants, and puts them in the place of that. So of course now he's going to think they really are magic beans. But I'm saying that to say that you have to start with what you have, and often is the case that what you have is more valuable to someone else than you realize it is. So you have to sort of figure out what those things are. Uh, and I
You know,
think, yeah, go ahead.
so in the example that you gave, right? Someone starting with a match, being able to trade it, being able to market and brand things such that they become valuable, which is a huge part of value, is what other people want and what other people say they want, what other people say that we should want as a
Right.
group. If you're this kind of guy, then obviously you do this kind of thing. If you're a real jazz musician, I'm sure there are things that you can't use that kind of reed if you're a real those kinds of
Right.
things.
Right. Right.
So you do that. You find the particular need of the individual. That was the one thing that I honed in on there, which is basically that in this world of leverage, when it comes to social interactions, when it comes to human negotiations, it's about giving people what they want, and then or taking hold with the ability to withhold from them what they want, right? So
Right.
there is an aspect of what do they want. Maslow's hierarchy of needs is a rough place to just kind of generally look at. Like, in other words, a place to kind of put a gradation. Like, it starts from all the lower needs to whatever higher needs they may be, and depend on the position and so on and so forth. You kind of hone in on that, and then you said that something that you may have, this person starting from level 0, may be more valuable. And immediately what came to mind is go get something, right? And the way you get something usually is by offering something, in the sense that this person has nothing to leverage. Okay,
Right.
get a job, for example. And why would you be more valuable to your employer than you think? It is true. Your employer is dying to outsource certain things that he does not want to have to do. Um, he may hate the pains of having to maybe train you, or the time that it will take for you to become acclimated and so on and so forth, for the machine to start running and so on and so forth. But you are a very important asset to his whole operation, even if you're just the busboy, because without the busboy, the whole operation falls apart, right? So
Right.
that kind of a thing. Now, there may be high supply of busboys, but his busboy in there, high supply, that's why it's not getting highly paid. But his particular busboy in his restaurant is very important to him. So you get something using what you have, starting with that basic, and then you become more indispensable as a busboy. You work really hard, and you use
Right.
indispensability to leverage higher pay or even a better job, right?
Yeah, something that you always have is the ability to outwork everyone. And that's often that's a common uh it's like an expectation even. But it's a common thing that is offered by someone with no experience. I'm willing to do anything that you want me to do. I'll stay after hours. I'll work ridiculous hours. You're not paying. You don't even worry about paying me more. You know, you can uh, you can show someone something about your character by doing that, and uh, and that can and that can create some of that sort of leverage, because
100%.
who else are they going to get that's going to, work these extra hours, and when they see, some crud on the floor, it's not their job, but they're down there cleaning it up, scraping bubble gum out from under the table and stuff. Who else is am I going to get? Man, I miss that guy. That guy. This is funny too. So this is The Office again. So Dwight, who was a terrific salesman, but is really not much savvy. Like his interpersonal skills are not very good, Um, and so he has this strong sense of loyalty. So what happens is he's secretly dating Angela, and he didn't want to out their relationship because she didn't want their relationship to be known to anyone in the office. And so what happened was he took a trip to deliver some accounting paperwork to corporate, which was in New York City, and they're in Scranton, so it's a long drive. And then he comes back, and he's late getting back, and he was not willing to say why it was that where he was, because he wasn't going to lie about it, and he also was loyal, so he wasn't going to out her. So, so he ends up resigning his position. So then he goes and starts working at Staples or something, and they immediately started to notice all of these things that he was doing that no one actually knew he was doing it. He was watering the plants. That's not his job. His job is not to water the plants, but he was watering the plants. So the plants started to die. And he was like, wait a minute, what's going on? I thought that the custodians or something were watering the plants. No, it was Dwight that was watering the plants. He was doing some things in Michael's office, you know, lining up some of his stuff or some kind of organization thing. And so he wasn't even telling people that he was doing this stuff, but he was doing that stuff. And so when he left, it wasn't just that they missed a salesman, they missed all of this other stuff that he was also doing. So yeah, making yourself sort of invaluable to the company. Eventually, of course, he gets his job back, and I think they, at least in a small way, they realized how much more valuable he actually was to the company. Yeah.
100%. Yeah. So coming in, showing there is something, a little bit of initiative, a little bit of that thing which you said was expected of someone whom does not come with experience or skills, if you will. Showing that initiative is rare and greatly appreciated at
Yeah.
that level. And people will start giving you all kinds of opportunities to grow because, again, the reason you're there is because they want to offload things. They would like to give you more responsibility and more money, right? If you can demonstrate that you can be more useful and economically viable, and then they can turn around, your boss or whomever, and do other things. Now, starting from the beginning, starting from the bottom, that's where we're at. We're talking about leverage. Use it, okay? How to get it, how to use it in terms of getting things done, in terms of human interactions, which tend to be filled with negotiations, influence, persuasion, manipulation, right? All that kind of stuff constantly going on in the world of all human interactions. Now, still staying at the beginning, there's something about the mindset aspect of leverage. In other words, if you don't view the world as a place where things can be moved, where obstacles can be circumvented, perhaps pushed, negotiated with, swam underneath, jumped over, if you don't look at the world that way, right, which is, in other words, if you don't have what they call a growth mindset, then the whole point of leverage doesn't even come into play, because leverage assumes The prerequisite of language is that we already assume that this is a world where we're going to go around moving stuff, right?
Yeah.
And
Yep.
that mindset of the world is a place where I can take action. The world is a place where I should be competing against my past self. The world is a place where I should be able to look at the chess pieces as movable, plays as being able to be made, as opposed to just fate has been written and it doesn't really matter what you do. It's just all a narrative and the game's all sewn up, blah, blah, blah. So, what is anything you have to say regarding the aspect of the mindset? In other words, you need to look at the world as a forum for action, as a video game where things can be moved before you even learn how to use the tool called leverage. Otherwise, you're never really going to use it or get it or use it effectively.
What was the song? Move, bish, get out the way. Right? We need that on a sound pad. Uh, um, yeah. I mean, so frequently you hear this saying, uh, you know, no is when you hear the word no, you have to find different angles on that no. Maybe the no right now, no because I don't understand some other factors that you can describe to me. No, because you haven't convinced me that you want this enough yet. Like I'm waiting for you to show that this isn't just like something that you wrote on like a napkin at lunch and then came into me to talk to me. I want to know how much of an investment that you have in it. So no, you know, so that whole uh like you said, moving around things, over things, um, waiting for someone to retire and then trying it again with someone else. Um, man, I can't tell you how many times that's been that's been the reality.
Hmm.
Many of the ideas that I've presented, the ones that have been recently adopted, they're the same ideas that I was peddling back in 2004, 2005. But I had to just be persistent and keep with it. And you just have to, sometimes you have to find the right audience. Sometimes, you know, it- and in people that are in supervising positions, uh, especially if they're like middle management kind of folks, they're going to tend there's a lot of mobility in that, or there's a lot of turnaround in those positions.
Hmm.
So you're going to end up with someone else who's going to be in that spot, and then you can just try it again, and you can use every no as sort of, I'm rehearsing this, I'm working on what the angles are, and by the time you get to the fourth or fifth person when they actually say yes, and then you like can't believe that they say yes. You got to control that though. You can't show your hand. That's right. You gotta look like you expected them to say yes, even though everyone else has been telling you no for for all this time. Oh goodness.
Yeah,
Uh,
yeah. So, I mean, because there is that other mindset, is there not? And we all have the line that demarcates this is kind of drawn in the middle of everyone's kind of psyche. We have both sides. So we know that disposition where it's like, why even bother? Why try? All the road is just fixed. The path is not. I'm perhaps I'm painting it in more bleak a manner than it may manifest for any particular person, but the sloth, even right, the sloth
mhm.
and all the other manifestations of resistance, not doing what you need to do and just thinking it doesn't really matter. Will it matter now if I go? The first two people said no. Does it really matter if I go now? That kind of a thing, as opposed to what you
Right.
said, which assumes that, oh, that's just the first iteration of no. Things never really fall in the right pocket in the right shot anyway. Looking at the world in that kind of a mechanistic way where things move, there's chances. Okay, I throw more balls towards the target, one will get in, that kind of a thing, right?
Right.
And I think that that is very important because you mentioned in there a way of looking at objections, a way of looking at no, which goes back to the conversation we had prior, right? A way
Mhm.
of looking at no, which is that people don't outright always, people will rarely ever tell you, and it's not like they're being deceptive. It is just common human courtesy. People don't tell you the reasons why they really are having a particular kind of objection or rejection of your idea, right? It's
Mm.
like they're not going to tell you that it's because your breath stinks or something like that. Also, even if it's within them in terms of the reasons, they're not going to tell you it's because they're not too sure what they're doing. And, and maybe they spoke, maybe they're scared of spending that amount of money or something like that. No, they'll tell you something about, well, we're looking at this purchase next quarter, or I got to talk to my wife,
Right.
or as you were saying, and all those other kind of varietals, if you will, of no that you mentioned, which is, no, because I want to see what you're coming up next with. No, because I want you to give a little bit more. In other words, no as a negotiation tactic, right? All
Right.
these things are always true about human interaction. People rarely ever tell you, you know what? No, because I'm scared of my wife, so I'm not gonna spend the allowance money that she gave me. Something
Stop simping.
like, I mean, any thoughts on that?
Stop simping. That's my thoughts on it. No. Uh, it always hey, everything goes back to that. That's the we're that's the planet that we're in orbit around that no, stop
Hmm.
simping. Okay.
Hmm.
Anyhow, I was going to say, yeah, when people say no, um, the timing thing, like uh, some of it is timing, and there's a version of no that we hear frequently. Uh, it's not in the budget, okay, and that version of no, the reason that you hear it so much is because it's highly effective.
Hmm.
It's a highly effective rejection technique. Um, Now, once you start to understand that budget is an invented word, which j- only its only job is to express the values and priorities of the company. That's that's what the word budget actually. That's what that means, right? So when someone is telling you, no, you can't have a raise, no, X, Y, and Z. We really dig, your work. I mean, we don't want to lose you. We just can't afford it right now. X, Y, and Z. It's not in the budget. Now they just told you that you're not valuable enough for them to add you to the budget. That's what they
So
just said.
yeah, the budget is a totem pole. The budget is a hierarchy. The budget is a list of priorities, right?
Right.
Because if you have infinite dollars coming out of this infinite dollar machine, there's no such thing as a budget.
Right. Right.
Because you're like, okay, everything's kind of like you don't have to prioritize. But the fact that, in other words, there is a real reason why people prioritize, why to give the devil his due. There's a real reason why the company
Mm.
needs to have a priority, a list of priorities, and that's because of scarcity. If supposedly, right, they're not infinitely wealthy. However, they're telling you that in their priority, you don't come high in their priority. That's basically what they're saying when they say, it's not in the budget. And that's a good one. That's a good way to put things that because I've probably said something similar before. But so get something, young man, we said, right? Go ahead and get something, which is go get and get that job, be indispensable, use and then leverage indispensability for a better job. Also at the ground level, you can always do the favors thing. In other words, also when you're in that job and you're making sure that you're very good, you need to make sure that it is a scene as well. There is a level you get to when you can now just let the work speak for itself. But
Yeah.
okay, as a matter of fact, don't do what Dwight did and just not let anybody know or let anybody see that he was responsible for all these things. And then luckily some fairy tale things gonna happen where they're gonna lose, and then they could come back. No, come begging you back. No, but basically you want as soon as possible for your value to kind of be seen, or you're seeing that you always come in consistently early, stay a little bit late, you're willing to take more work, all these things in the beginning you want to make sure that they're seen, because you've not built up the branding yet. You don't have the marketing department yet. You don't have the reputation yet, whereby you could just do the work and let the work speak for itself, right? So
Yeah.
yeah, that part is key in the beginning. And then I was talking about the favors, which is more like the what I call the seesaw leverage. You do something for someone at your level, you lift them up a little bit. Now they are at least well disposed towards you, right? At least they're not likely to stab you in the back very readily tomorrow. You know what I'm saying? Like, so
Right.
at least that, but then at most they will use the boost to then be able to boost you later. A colleague that you met that you helped with and always delivered good work with at this particular restaurant, and you're a busboy, goes to a different restaurant, and now boom, he gets, he's the frontline manager because someone retired. I'm using that. And now he is able to bring you in, those kinds of things, right? Now,
Right.
after getting, because you mentioned the particular needs, right? And I'm wondering if we can get into that a little bit more, because when we talk about leverage, we know about mechanical leverage. Yes, we know about levers. It works. And then when we talk about leverage with people, you're like, okay, well, people usually want things like money or whatever it may be, and you can use it to move them around. You can hold up a carrot or whatever and have them, follow it. Um, but what are the different kinds of needs, if you will? Perhaps you could categorize them. Perhaps you could talk about like different things that you've had to find out that what did this person really want? Let's say, for example, you're talking about all those no's that the person said. What did they really want? Were they really after maybe self-esteem? They want you to praise them a little bit more, or
Mhm.
were they after a bribe? I don't know. Like, what in your experience in these kinds of different needs that people have that you can use to as leverage with them?
You know, there are certain, I'm not going to use anybody's names, but there is a certain musician, famous musician that I know, or, and he's kind of, maybe not as much this way now as he used to be, but it was at least speculated that in order to get a gig with this guy, you had to do a lot of puckering up. Okay. A lot of brown nosing, you know? And for that reason, I knew that that was not something that I was going to be able to do. Okay. So some people want that. They want you to, you know, you know, they want you to pucker up. They want you to, I mean, that's, some folks, that's just, it makes them feel better. It makes them feel powerful. It makes them feel, um, I don't know. So I think that there are some things on this list that you probably just have to say, pick your battles. That's probably not the thing I can do. Maybe I just need to wait this guy out. Um, so that's one thing. One other thing I think is the case is, uh, I think people want someone that they can trust, that they can depend on, even if it's to do something sort of menial, like go get me coffee, um, or anything like that. It's like over time, they start to sort of develop trust that if they give you something to do, then you're going to get it done, even if it's coffee. Oh, let me try something a little bit harder. Hey, can you? can you can you pick my kid up from school? That's quite a jump actually, but but can you can you pick my kid up from school? You know, they're in a bind or something. Oh, he handled that well. Well, can you? Hmm. You know, so another thing I think people are looking for people that they can sort of pass on information to, like a master apprentice relationship. They're kind of looking for that guy that they can kind of, um, this is my guy, this is my protege, this is the guy that I taught him everything he knows, and then so everything that you accomplish, they feel like they had a hand in on it, you know.
Mm-hmm.
So often is the case that people want that. Um, you know, you just have to figure out what you're okay with.
Mm-hmm.
Um, I have certain lines that I won't go across because I just don't feel good about myself
Mm-hmm.
if I do it. Um, uh, and yes, that means that I've tried certain things that I don't like before, and I just knew that it it didn't pay me back enough
Mm-hmm.
to be worth that. But those are a couple things that that I can think of. Yeah,
Mm-hmm. So flattery and praise, right?
yeah.
Flattery and praise, and then it seems that in terms of people's needs, there's a question of taste, and taste can be judged sometimes from a very simple dimension of, is it excessive, whatever the manifestation of this need is, right? Is it
Mhm.
excessive? In other words, everyone likes flattery and praise. Everyone wants a protege, right?
Yeah,
Everyone wants to be like, even if it's your son or something, right? So it's
no,
not like some alien notion to everyone.
no.
So it's just a question. It becomes a question of subtlety and taste and so on and so forth. Again, in terms of manifestations of how people's desires, and then it's on you. You're saying to pick what you're going to play with. Like you're not going to both brown nose everyone, and then also tell everyone that needs to feel like they taught you everything to also feel that way. And you have limits in terms of playing this leverage game. So you're saying there's a morality to leverage. Okay, so yeah, so don't use the gun to your head, I guess, is leverage, right? So don't use that. That'll be one extreme of things. Don't put a gun to
I got
people's heads. And
yeah.
okay, interesting. So uh, just one last point on that. Now, the reason why you don't play certain games with people, you said that you don't feel good about yourself, right? So this person wants you to kiss their butt. They want you to make them feel, to fawn over them, as Moonlight Reverie says in the
Yeah.
chat, right? You don't do that, but you, I noticed, did not put some kind of moral coloring on it. You put more of a aesthetic coloring, saying that I don't like the way it makes me feel. So you think that, oh, this person may be you may judge the person that, oh yeah, that thing they're doing is wrong. But is it wrong if you were to participate in it? Like, you know what? I think it's wrong for people to like to get their butt kissed. Okay. But
Yeah.
is it wrong for me to kiss their butt?
Yeah, yeah. It's back to the philosophy again. Um, well, right. It is it the prostitute that's wrong or is it the John that is wrong? 'Cause, like, well, I don't know. Some places that they have made uh, essentially made a prostitution legal, but it's illegal to to be the John though. So
Mm-hmm.
then they haul you out. Okay. Um, man, that's uh that's interesting.
Because it's like, okay, let me try to let me try to stretch it out through time, and let's see if a plausible story can be drawn out. Like, okay, if you get into the habit, let's say, of meeting people on the extreme end and satisfying their extreme kinds of idiosyncrasies with regards to what they want you to do for them, like you must greet them 7 times every morning, call them the Lord and Master of Thunder, for them to be able to pat you on the head and give you that kind of. is it possible that if you get into the habit of meeting people at that end, you become skilled at it? And it tends to be also a shortcut, by the way. It tends to be more of a, or anyways, you become particularly skilled at it. You go start looking for it even, and that you may start then blurring the lines between there and the whole gun to your head end of things that we talked about. Where now you're just robbing people blind. I don't know. It's a slippery slope kind of argument that I'm making. Slippery slopes, take it or leave it. Some people like slippery slopes, some people don't like it. But I think it's an interesting question. Like, where does one draw the line? Like, okay, that person, I have to deal with them, I have to do business with them, but they want me to sit down there and listen to their BS stories. And I actually have some clients like this. Hope they're not watching. But
right, don't lose no money now.
And there's a certain kind of a they want to feel like, oh, either I'm your biggest client, right? Or yeah, I hooked you up with that other client, right? Like and also by because of that fact, they'll sit down and talk your ear off about something or act for anyway, certain kinds of things like that. And I'm almost like, well, is there a principle that says, well, I should just like be like, no, this is, but anyways, I know that I snuck that one in there to derail us into the land of talking about what is good or
well,
but go ahead.
If I can say, I do think that there's quite a bit of gray area because, oh man. Now, I mean, if they're asking you to do something illegal or, something, just something that's way over the line or something, then maybe I could say that it's wrong. Maybe it's wrong for you to do it because it's a sort of simping, and so you don't, so you're sort of you're lowering yourself so low as to reduce the sort of godlikeness that we all have, right?
I like that you brought it, you took it there. It kind of reminds me of a virtue, Aristotle's virtue ethic, or like the Greek, other than the Platonic, because Plato was always going for like the pure good and that kind of thing. But there is an idea of nobility, dignity in Aristotle's ethics, and if you take it down into, as you just the Judeo-Christian thing, the spark of God in us that says, you know what, technically, perhaps if I were to kiss this person's butt to use leverage, right? Technically, maybe I'm fine, but I don't do that kind of thing.
Yeah,
and it's because of dignity, blah blah blah, all those things we just said. So
right.
I think that is a fair point. Yes. So leverage. I wanted to talk also about. I mentioned that the perception of the world in terms of fixed mindset, not seeing the world as a place where things can be moved, seeing the world as fate being set, versus a growth mindset, which is, I can move things around and so on and so forth. That's a way in which perception, right, helps helps you use leverage. Perception helps you take advantage of the world. Perception helps you plan. Perception helps you see opportunities. Perception helps you understand and maybe take rejections and the objections per our last conversations, right? Because you perceive the world as a place where, they're going to be throwing those darts, and maybe you need to play level 6 of this Mario Brothers 5 times, but that's how level 6 of Mario Brothers goes. Sometimes you just got to play 5 times, like this is what happens. Anyways, that kind of a thing. But there's another aspect of perception, which is people's perception of you. We alluded to it earlier. Branding, image, right? So after that person, I said, when this person, the new person that came to us, came to you, one of your students said, hey, Dr. Thunder, I don't have leverage. I need leverage to do things. I don't have anything to leverage yet. You said, okay, find stuff. We said, you're very useful to an employer, especially even when you're at the lowest level. Show indispensability, leverage this, do that, and so on and so forth. Make sure that they see it. You don't have a branding department yet. How does one or what is the importance of, or what are your thoughts around this whole branding, image, reputation, if you will, thing, and how it can be used as leverage? How does one cultivate it? How important is it?
So, what tying in on the reputation thing, one thing that we haven't said is recommendation. That can be a form of leverage. So, if, say, for instance, you know, I'm a young pup, right, fresh out, trying to get something happening. My dad's best friend is the president of Honda. I'm just saying. He writes a letter of recommendation, and it's like, oh snap, this is like the president of, of Honda. You know, I guess maybe I should listen to what this guy has to say. You know, and so that's a sort of, your recommendation letter is acquired because you had a good reputation and a good rapport with the person you asked for the letter from. I write dozens of recommendation letters every year for colleagues, for former students trying to get jobs, and so uh, that definitely is a benefit. And it's not just about having a, you know, I write a pretty good letter, but it's not as the way that the letter is written is not as important as who it is that the letter came from.
Hmm. So letters of recommendation tying into the reputation thing that you said. Now, let's say this young pup, right? He has done the things that you have said he should do. He has gotten this job. He has become indispensable. He has leveraged indispensability for better jobs. He has then combined perhaps with other people, other competent people, right? That other busboy at the restaurant, so on and so forth, in order to combine their weight so that they can have more leverage, because that's another way in which to get more leverage is add your force and then use leverage as a force multiplier and so on and so forth. He has done all these things, but he's now wondering about, some people say, for example, people should know you, or you should be known, or you should have a brand, or you should have some kind of you should control your narrative. I don't know, write a blog, write a book, do that kind of a message, especially in this era of social media. That is a powerful leverage. You just talked about the reputational one, whereby you had a good reputation and good rapport with this particular person. You can have good reputation and good rapport with the public writ large. People cultivate this stuff. People use it for marketing and for influencing as well, social media influencers, whatever, right? What are your thoughts regarding that? How is it? Should everyone these days be a public persona? Is everyone, I've even heard it put this way, that these days, and it is true a lot of the times in this social media era, people rather invest in, let's say, or with, let's say you follow this particular character. His name is Anthony Pompliano, or his name is Peter Schiff, or something, right? And I want to invest with Peter Schiff rather than Merrill Lynch. I don't know what's in Merrill Lynch, but if there's a Peter Schiff branch of Merrill Lynch, it's like, yeah, I follow Peter Schiff. I want to. In other words, I don't want Merrill Lynch is just some gray blob to me. But Peter Schiff, oh, that guy watches YouTube stuff. I'll put my money there. So all that kind of stuff, from where it's like people are
Yeah.
becoming like, it is individual brands, individual corporations. Social media is out there anyways. Your face is out there anyways. There's recognition out there. So there are many kinds of ways in which people say you should be using this kind of leverage, the image leverage. What are your thoughts about it, generally speaking?
Yeah. Um, there is this thing about visibility, and that's a interesting thing because, okay, so social media, like, what is like a blue check mark on Instagram like really worth? You know,
It's the mark of the
uh,
chosen ones.
Yeah, that's right. It's evidence of God likeness. Uh, um, yeah. Let's take care of this real quick.
Sebastian Ritchie, always holding it down, always supporting, and always appreciated. And yes, we will tackle this question regarding keeping up with contacts, international perhaps. It is something that I don't that in hindsight I do have a system for it, and I've kind of noticed the system, but I kind of follow the intuitive path of just kind of noticing, going through ebbs and flows, and then reaching out. But we'll tackle that, and perhaps it does kind of hinge upon this whole kind of reputational um, leverage that we're talking about, right? So you don't want people that know you for being great when you guys met at the International Saxophone Players Association in Oslo in 2000, whatever, right? And he was like, "Oh, that Sean Wall Thunder guy was great." You want him to remember that he met you and that you're great, and you never quite know when it will come back to pay rewards,
Right,
right?
right. That's right.
Or from which corner. Because I was kind of missing in action for about a month in with regards to certain things. I still stayed available. We still did shows and so on and so forth, but I was kind of traveling, so you can't really do everything just yet, right? I know there's the time is coming when you can be moving and everything is still on point. Maybe I need to be. I can't afford personal assistance of all kinds yet, but that travel with you, those kinds, yeah.
Mm.
So, um, but the point is, as a result, I missed a particular important kind of little deadline. Okay, but someone made exceptions for me, and this was over in Europe. Okay, Liechtenstein, the country is because one of the companies concerned is a Swiss German company, right? So, but thing is, I've worked with some of these people for a while, but this particular guy I met once in San Francisco, right? Plus his other guy used to be my former boss, that kind of a thing. But my former boss moved to Liechtenstein, and this other one guy happened to meet once in San Francisco. We went to a job site. We did certain things, blah, blah, blah. But so he kind of knows of me. Plus, he is a good friends and trust. This other guy who used to be my former boss, and that guy vouched for me in Liechtenstein over there somewhere, right, in Europe. And I was able to kind of get a pass for this particular deadline or whatever. So it does come in handy. It does come in, but then you talk about social media and stuff like that. Like, how important is it? Should more people be out there being known and then somehow using that as leverage?
Yeah, it's a tricky kind of thing. Um, so I think we're stuck with social media. So those of us that are still sort of romanticizing, the days of the past, prior to social media and the sort of the sort of destruction it has waged, especially on the dating market. Those days are long gone. It's a new world now. What I decided to do with social media was I was just going to use it to promote the stuff that I'm doing and the stuff that I want to be doing. That's not necessarily how everybody uses social media. A lot of folks, it's a lot of cat videos, you know, and a lot of political views, like heavy, you know, political views and stuff. And I think you got to be careful with that. And I can admit that in the past I've probably stepped over that line a couple times.
Hmm.
But this is years and years ago. I kind of learned from that. I was like, you know what? I'm not even going to mess with that. I'm using this. This is like an extension of my of my leverage machine. I am creating leverage by showing a lot of the different kinds of things that I'm doing, so that no one will be able to say, "Oh," no one will be able to say, uh, you know, uh, um, you know, this guy's not doing anything. This guy's not about anything. He's not serious. Whatever. Or we're not going to take this guy seriously because you know it's not obvious that he even could do anything else. I mean, he's kind of stuck with us. You know.
So this is an interesting point. You're in academia. There's a character that comes to mind. I'm sure you know Cornel West, right? Of course you know Cornel
Mm.
West. I like he's one of the few. There is a quality in people that some people that I may disagree with on many things, but I still appreciate them as interlocutors, and that's not just in that surface way. I'm talking about a few people that you can actually disagree with, but because they have a breadth and because they have a freedom within which they operate, you can actually. The way I put it is this: there's some people, they won't even go into the building with you because it's like, I disagree with you. But with people like Cornel West, you could be like, we only disagree on uh, the interpretation of page 5 and 6 on the book on the shelf in that building, right? So with someone like, you can actually go in the building, sit down next to the fireplace, open up that book, have all the contents and the premises of the building, if you will, as shared in common, but really only we disagree on the interpretation. Like the reason why he's way on the left and I'm way somewhere else is because of the interpretation of pages 4 and 5 on some book, right? And there are few people that you can actually do that with, because most people just stay outside. They're like, I'm not even, I'm not going
Right.
anywhere near that. I disagree with you, and so on and so forth. However, the reason I brought up Cornel West is because you're in academia, he's in academia. So what you mentioned about, well, I'm doing this as a branch of, and it's an extension, if you will, of my leverage. People will not be able to say, well, this guy's not just about anything. Well, what can he even do? Blah, 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 blah. Cornel West, for example, is one of those characters in the academic field, but also is there on Fox News and CNN and everywhere else.
Oh yeah.
And
Yeah.
he can wield that. Now,
Mhm.
there's a pendulum though, where if you wield it too much, then it
Mhm.
becomes the reverse. It's like, oh, this guy, Dr. Thunder or Cornel West, all he does is talk on, he doesn't do serious academic work anymore. He's just always on Fox News and writing opinion op-eds on the New York
Right.
Times and so on and so forth. Uh, this other guy, Tom Friedman, when was the last time he wrote a serious book? Or I forget his name now, the
Mhm.
Nobel Prize winning economist, whatever. But it's like, he doesn't do real economics anymore. He's just been writing up. Anyways, that kind of a thing. So when you were mentioning that, I think that Cornel West came to mind because, yes, you can play that game. There is a fine line, though, where if you go beyond, in the that's the world of academia, though. But in the world of business, I find that there really is no limit.
Mhm.
Like, I don't mean limit in terms of character, behavior, what you put out there, just in terms of people being able to make the judgment saying, oh, he's out there too much. It's like saying
Mm.
Coca-Cola has too many billboards. It's like, no.
Yeah, right.
So, because people have this idea, MBA type, they talk about overexposure. And it's like, is Apple overexposed? Is Google overexposed? Should Google kind of hide a little bit more? Maybe Google should become a little bit more boutique, more like, exclusive. Like, oh, in order to use our search site, you got to pass through this velvet rope thing. It's like no, overexposure in the business world really doesn't exist. Anyways, I've gone off on a rant there. I don't know if there was anything in
No,
there that
no,
I
no,
said that you wanted to react to
no,
it.
no. No. I'm with that. It's interesting because, like, yeah, the overexposure thing. That's a. Uh, I mean, it's a frequently. So I honestly, I don't think that this really exists in academia either. By the way, and what I try to do is, because my primary research area is as a performer. composer, arranger thing. So as I do those things, which I do them frequently, uh, I post on social media about them, you know, and so it's very easy to see that I'm very active, and also I keep track of every single performance and presentation that I do, every single one. It's in my CV, curriculum vita. It's updated every year. That's part of my annual review process. And so there's a lot of stuff on my CV. So what? So the overexposure thing. Now there is a practical sort of like how much stuff can you do well, and how busy can you be and still do the job well. There is that sort of thing, and how much touring can I do? Really, I can do some, during the school year even, you know, I can do some, but I can't be gone for like half the semester, I can't do that. But on the other side, it's like, well, how high profile is this? Is like, like I did a 2-week tour in the middle of a semester with the Count Basie Orchestra. Before the pandemic, and we worked it out. Uh, you know, we made it work. Rearranged some things so that everybody got what they needed to get. I could cover all my classes, but that's not the kind of thing that you say no to. You say yes to that because it's going to end up being better for the school too, because it's going to turn into like a recruiting opportunity. So there's interesting ways to sort of contextualize things. But how valuable is a blue check mark? Now, if I am not sort of, I don't know, like if I'm not like some like babe hound or something, I mean, how valuable actually is it? I mean, it's definitely valuable to those that are babe hounds. It's very valuable because if you send a message to someone and you have a blue check mark, a DM, they're going to respond to your DM, right?
I like how you brought it back there to sliding into DMs. The
It's all look, man. We're putting a lot of like flowers and stuff around this thing, but but really, it's only really about that
it's really
that
about
same.
sliding in the
That's right.
all right, all right, all right. But you mentioned something interesting though about the blue check mark being anointed, if you will, right?
Yeah.
And you have a mark there that shows you're one of the people. Um, and you mentioned they're definitely good for the babe hounds. Uh, it is also um, now there are hounds of other kinds, and perhaps given my penchant to kind of ask these kinds of questions, like, okay, let's say someone like me, for example, I would say I'm a hound of another kind. I don't really know, but it's not really a babe hound thing. Maybe if I sat down with some Freudian, they're gonna tell me, yeah, they'll give me the nice wisdom you just said, which is you're just putting flowers around it, bro. You're sublimating. Really, the reason why you do all this crap is just for that. But so it's like there are others who, from like, I when I started that other engineering channel of mine, I just wanted to put stuff out there, right? Same thing with this
Mm.
one as well. This channel now, and same thing with the band. Same thing with certain other kinds of things that I do outside of my regular work life, my business world, and so on and so forth. The need or the want to expand that work aspect to is a certain kind of hounding of things. Um, Glory, Sparta. I would even perhaps even use let's go base with it and call it, recognition and even ego and all that kind of stuff. Like, yeah, let's throw it all there. Now, is there something fundamentally different between what me, right, and someone who is out there living the jet set lifestyle, being like, as you call them, a babe hound? Um,
Mhm.
both of us are looking for the blue check mark.
Right.
You know, and one might get into the subtlety of priorities and also of motivations as well, and so on and so forth. But I think that ultimately both are check mark hounds. No.
Yeah. Um, I think if you can find a way to leverage that into something, I just wonder what are the things that you can leverage it into. So in other words, like if if all I was a social media personality and I had a blue check mark, what can I do with that? The question is not if I already have a career and doing something else and I happen to, because some scandal, become a blue check mark. What can I do? Well, yeah, I might be able to leverage that check mark into some more business in the thing that I already did well. But if I don't really have anything to offer other than that, you think that, um, I don't know, maybe, you know, may- maybe I'm, I got the jawline, like Kevin talks about, jawline and six pack, you know, and so that's how I got it. Then I, I don't know where else you can go with that. It doesn't seem like there's very far you can go. But if you got it doing something that is meaningful, then I think it can only enhance. It will only enhance what it is that you're doing. And so I think pursuing it in that frame of mind, or that from that from that perspective, rather, I think is that could be positive. You could you can work something with that.
Hmm.
You could be working with something, like O'Shea says. Um, but if it like again, if you're like the the gorilla glue girl, and you get your and you get your check mark like that, I just don't know, because it doesn't seem like she's a high skill kind of
Hmm. Yeah.
evidence by
It's
the
not like,
gorilla
oh,
glue.
she was also at the verge of figuring out something in the world of brain surgery, and then she did it. In which case, because sometimes it does happen like that, but um,
Uh,
this is industry. Now, I haven't forgotten your question there, Sebastian. We have not forgotten your question about how to keep up with people and so on and so forth. But this whole blue check mark thing here and then meaning is a key aspect here, because when you say meaning, for me there's a certain kind of a lining up of like foundation and then this and then this and then this. Meaning for me just means, okay, it's within a context. Like just the word meaning means that, right? It's like, well, what's the meaning of this word? Means, well, what's the context of this word, right? Well, what is the word dinner? Oh, dinner means, table, people, blah blah, kind of defines a context there. So, and I've heard you say before, having a high value and then making sure that the virtues required for getting that, blah blah blah, so that when you get some particular thing here, you can see how it aligns with your highest values, and that gives you a sense of meaning. So doing something and then having what I call, perhaps, or what we could categorize as the aesthetic sides, the frills, the societal recognition, if you will, simply aligning with it, right, with what you're doing, versus you going for the frills, going for the aesthetic thing, going for the societal, whatever the word I used before is, right? Recognition. Uh, that is a very different thing. Things don't align that way. It becomes a total
hmm.
disaster. And these are the, sometimes people look at it like, oh well, is there, because I started out saying, well, there is no difference, just so that we could talk about it, right? Um, but the differences tend to be like this. And I always use aesthetics in this particular example because there is a difference between someone who puts on the tuxedo thinking that it gives them grandeur, as opposed to putting it on, giving it the grandeur the same way that the child, when, in other words, when the child picks up this pen and goes zoom like that, it is the
Mhm.
child that bestows upon the pen the grandeur of it being a flying plane. All these things in the world of aesthetics are play. There is no reason to go get this fiber out of these worms to make shirt with. You're just playing. It's the same thing as taking this thing and you're like, woo, oh, what can I do with this? Oh, there's a tree bark. I wonder if I can make a shoe out of that tree bark, mix it with that other thing, that other weird rock I
Yeah.
found down by the
Yeah.
water, and so on and so forth. So there is a big difference between someone who puts on that cuffling made with that particular stone found by the river of wherever,
Yeah.
knowing that they're the one bestowing upon it the grandeur, as opposed to someone who's like, oh, this thing is now being put upon me. Yes, yes, yes.
Mm.
But what do you have to say to Mr. Sebastian? Okay, like just a few pointers about how to keep up with these relationships, especially international ones. I do the random. Uh, in other words, it depends on the level of the relationship. Okay. Um, there is actually there's actually a company called a bag of DICKS. Okay, and it's like
Mm.
candy. I don't know if you've heard of it. It's like candy shaped like that, and if it's a close buddy of mine, like someone that can share, with whom I can share that kind of a joke, but they moved to Japan a year and a half ago or something, I'll send them something like that randomly, right? Like boom, he opens it, oh that bastard, right? That kind of a thing,
Mhm.
because Sebastian's talking about like these Christmas cards and so on. So, but I always try to, in between November and beginning of January, for clients now, send something, seasons greetings, happy new year, something like that. Da, 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 da. Go to Costco, get these chocolates, divide it up, handwritten thing. And also there are companies that do this kind of thing. You could just type in,
Mhm.
sending complimentary cards or free, whatever, or business. I forget what it is, but there are companies that do this particular thing for you. You just sign up, you put these names, they do this kind of stuff for you. So random gifts all the way to
Mm.
seasonal items, done systematically, even by going to certain websites and stuff. What do you have to say, Mister?
So you're a fruit basket guy. Uh, I'm earlier today I just made the challenge. I just challenged myself. I want to be able to reference The Office more. So you just have to start doing it, you know, and then, you could make it happen. But, there's the episode where Michael decides that um the that he wants to try to get some old clients back. And so he says, "You know what? We're going to do fruit baskets." And they're these really elaborate baskets and they have all of this stuff in them, gourmet coffee and, peanuts and pecans and chocolate this and this all of it's just really. So then he drives around, him and Dwight, of course. Uh, they drive around, they, find the place, and then basically what comes out is that it wasn't it the only thing that caused them to change their business is because of pricing. It had nothing to do with, if he was, bringing the basket or not. It was because so when you do stuff like that, you have to have substance. There has to be substance, you know, it, uh, together with that. I think sometimes folks think that you can use uh, strategies like that and not really have any. You don't really know the person that well. Even you're like shooting in the dark, or you're just here. Let me try this thing. Hey, let me just
Mhm.
start. sending folks stuff, it's not going to work because you don't have enough
Hmm.
history, and you don't have enough substance in what it is that you're providing for that to have any impact. Because if it's dog crap that you're offering, it doesn't matter, how many, gift baskets, you know.
Yeah, the
Um,
particular needs that you started out with your first office reference, I believe, the guy going from the match to the most Im- or valuable item being sold that day by finding the particular angles. So you don't know the particular angles. Now, so something that I didn't mention this part, right? But uh my personality type is to just kind of subtly kind of gauge people, have hints
yeah,
for this person, I'll send something. This person, don't send something. Send to his
right,
assistant instead. It's almost like this
right, right,
guy would appreciate that I sent his assistant, whom I know we work
right.
together, as opposed to me sending him something. And these things are just those kinds of subtle ways of reading people that,
Yeah,
and I'm not even good with this thing, this kind of the world of extroversion and the world of backstabbing and all that. I'm not good at it from I don't want to. For me, it's very it's I do it like engineering. Okay, now I even
mm,
sound, all my exes are now, they're like, I knew it, he has no soul. He has no heart.
yeah,
But for
yeah,
me, it's very much of an engineering thing, and you cannot help the way you are in certain regards. I'm starting to find out now,
right.
which is like,
That's right.
you can't go judging someone. Like, how could you treat people like that? It's like, well, it's just the way the person thinks and actually lives in this world. I tend to look at everything like a little, okay, this tends to work, this tends to work, this tends to work. It's always like what works, what works, what works, what works. I don't have this natural, like, oh, this person now needs me be be receptive. Like, I don't know. I only have like, okay, does it compute? Does it work? So yes, you are absolutely correct that you need to have demarcations between different kinds of people, what you send, what you don't send to them, how much information you have regarding what exactly it is that they need. Okay, I even give the example of all the way from the bag of whatever example for a certain kind of friend down to just regular kinds of things for clients and so on and so forth. But don't do the LinkedIn happy birthday or the Facebook happy birthday. Don't do that. In other words, like, because they know that LinkedIn told you to tell them. So as a matter of
Yeah,
fact, yeah. Sometimes what I
yeah.
do
It's
is,
tough. Man, that stuff it is so tough to keep on top of all of these little sort of nuances that you're mentioning.
hmm,
I think that folks, um, I think it's good to know that there's a way to approach this that is not that doesn't require some sort of um uh, what's the word I'm looking for, um what's clairvoyance, not,
gotcha. So yeah, on the nature side,
y-
yeah,
some deep
some kind of deep
intuition.
intuitive feeling
Yeah,
for people, empath, and
yeah, yeah, yeah,
type
yeah, that's the
being.
word I wanted.
Yeah.
Yeah, yeah, yeah. Yeah, it's nice. It's good to know that you don't that it doesn't take that. It doesn't. You don't have to have that. You can still approach that in another. And obviously, this has been successful for you, or else you wouldn't keep doing it.
100%. So I have found that even so, the natural, let's say natural extroverted types, whom are very good at, they read the room well. What I mean by they just kind of read it naturally. They in real time will just come up with the things to say and so on and so forth. It's almost like sometimes they don't realize, and because these quote unquote soft skills tend not to be viewed as skills or tools, right, by the general public, these people fall into the disadvantage of having a talent. Now, for me, it is a tool. I look at it more as a tool because it is not natural for me to go in there and know what works in the room dynamics. So, for example, I'll make videos like how to be the most comfortable person in the room. So for me, it's like I gigs or meetings, I go to the room before anybody. I sit in different positions in the room. I
Yeah,
breathe, look at touch the room. I acclimate all my cells to the room. By definition, I become very comfortable in the room, right? I know the little corner, I know the little loose ends on the carpet over there. It's like, I'm actually more comfortable than people whom are workers at that office. Let's say it's their boardroom, right? Right? They've not sat in all the different positions in the room. I came there early. I sat and I looked. I was able to walk around the room. I do this for gigs as well. Like I'll go around the scene, the bar, whatever it is, the backyard, whatever it may be. So for me, it becomes that kind of thing. But for the natural kind of room, a room capturer, controlling the room, that's not going to be their system. They're not going to have a system. They just naturally go in there. For someone like me, I have a system, but I'll control the crap out of the room. And also because it's a system for me, I can be more consistent, right? I can consistently. Yeah.
And also, you'll be a better teacher.
Yes.
See, people don't catch this because you have a lot of natural ability. Because you're talented, does not necessarily mean that you can impart that to someone else, right? Those are separate skills, and often is the case that if you are not uh, naturally capable in a certain area, and you had to work that thing out and look at it from all these different angles, you will be a much better teacher to other folks because you actually understand how it works. It's like in music, some people have perfect pitch. All right. Now, if you have perfect pitch, what that means is that you don't need a frame of reference, but that you just know what the notes are that are being played. Doesn't matter what instrument. You just know what the notes are. Now, here's the problem. The problem is because you don't ever uh, need a frame of reference, the tendency for people with perfect pitch is not to develop some of the sort of internal connections that people that don't have perfect pitch have to rely on. They have to develop that so that so like relative pitch, for instance, in recognizing certain intervals. Um, there is, there's almost no need to do that if you have perfect pitch. It'll manifest itself in other ways in your musicianship if you don't develop that. But really, where it's going to manifest itself is in your teaching, because you're not going to be teaching all people with perfect pitch. You're going to be teaching people that don't have perfect pitch. And you can't just tell them, hey, well, you just don't know the notes are. You don't know what the notes are. You don't know what the notes are. See, that is not going to help anybody. So you need to have some of those, you need to have looked at it from a lot of different angles, and then you're going to be better imparting that. I had something I was going to say about. Well, I'll probably think of it later.
Okay. It wasn't about Sebastian's question or.
Oh yeah. It was.
Okay.
So this pandemic started, and when it started, it created, I think, an incredible opportunity. Now, I play a lot of gigs over the course of a year, but of course, I've played less gigs because of the pandemic, and so have many of my musician friends, um, and folks that I am connected with by musician friends. And prior to the pandemic, I wanted to start a podcast, but I just didn't have time, and the kinds of people that I wanted to interview were not readily available. People like Wynton Marsalis and folks like that. They're busy. They're gigging. So and I'm busy. So when is that going to work out? So this is sort of a practical way to sort of deal with this issue. But if you want to try to stay connected with folks, which I did, I was like, okay, well, I'm gonna interview people, and then we'll have like meaningful conversations, and we'll talk, for an hour and a half, so uh, and it'll be memorable. So even to folks that maybe are not people that I've ever collaborated with before, they're going to remember that, and it's documented, right? So they're going to remember that, and so later on, it makes it pretty easy to for me to connect with someone that I don't have a direct contact with, because of the people that, even if I just limited, because I have a pretty extensive network, because I've been doing what I've been doing for a long time. You know, I've been a musician since I was 6, right? And so I have extensive network. So I know a lot of folks, and they know a lot of folks. But even if I said, okay, I'm not going to rely on that, I'm only going to rely on the folks that I interviewed. Um, well,
So
let's see here.
you're
I
telling
did.
Sebastian to start a podcast?
Yeah,
Yeah, we've been revolving around that question about marketing, branding, controlling your narrative, putting yourself out there, having
yeah,
some kind of your market facing, front facing, people facing, town square persona, if you will, going to
yeah,
clubhouse and talking nonsense, whatever it may be. Um, because we're talking about leverage, and because people do business and interact with and do transactions with people whom they know, like, and trust. And trust is that lubricant, that thing that makes it such that, okay, yes, I can either tell you to get the coffee or pick up my son from school, right? And I don't have to think about it. I don't have to invest a lot of time, energy, fussing about that decision. Makes my life frictionless, and so on and so forth. So I think that it's quite interesting that you mentioned there, with regards to keeping up with people, that it got elevated up to the social media landscape. And that's now where you're keeping up with people. And there are people whom keep up with each other in these YouTube streets, if you will, right?
yeah.
In the chat, just in the chats alone, maybe that's where they're like, oh, you know what? I haven't spoken to this guy in a while. Oh, but that's because we always see each other on Bernard's stream or something. It's like, yeah, that's how we've been keeping in touch, or something like that. But ladies and gentlemen, we have 6 minutes on the clock. I thought, I assumed, I presumed, I knew that this was going to be something where we were going to have another part, because we're not done with this leverage thing here. We barely kind
No,
of scratched the surface. Okay. We
no.
barely scratched the surface of leverage. Again, Archimedes said, give me a lever long enough and a place to put it, I will move the world. Leverage is powerful, a force multiplier. Okay. Now there are all kinds of leverage in human interactions which are filled with negotiations. You want to be able to give people what they want, or withhold that which they may need, right? Have a particular kind of personality, talent, being pleasant to be around, that is unique and people find valuable. That way people can vouch for you. You mentioned letters of recommendations and things like that. Okay. We just basically scratched the surface of somebody coming to you and saying, hey, Dr. Thunder, I'm starting from zero. How does one start from level zero? I have nothing to leverage with. What do I do? And then you said, hey, at the bottom, you can show enthusiasm. You can show, because it's rare at the bottom. You stand out like a sore thumb right there, because everyone else is, no, anyways, I'm not going to insult anybody. But it is rare at the bottom. The enthusiasm, the initiative that you show, the taking up of tasks, the decisiveness. All these things are very rare at the bottom. If you do them, then you can get that job. Be indispensable. Leverage indispensability for the better job, and so on and so forth. And then we got into the subtleties of how of what people want. Do they want you to kiss their butt, or do they want to mentor you and have you look up to them, or whatever it is that they may be needing at this time. I also mentioned Maslow's hierarchy of needs as well, just kind of looking through some people, for example, like, let's say, immigrants, first generation or just fresh immigrants. They tend not to care so much in this. They tend to be driven by economics. In other words, They're in the building of a homestead phase in the Maslow's hierarchy of needs. They're here for food, clothing, shelter, establishment of certain things. The more established people in the society, regardless of socioeconomic class, will be more concerned with, let's say, things such as being recognized by the party or by the dominant group, or having things like dignity or self-esteem or certain rights, right? So it even varies with groups like this. And Maslow's hierarchy of needs is a kind of way to kind of see, because fresh immigrants tend to be at the lower end there, taking care of house and home and those kinds of things. People who have been here for generations and generations are in the streets agitating about their rights, and the immigrants is like, I don't even understand what you people are talking about. I'm just trying to keep this bread baking business going. I don't get what do you mean this esteem, this right, so on and so forth. But anyways, I'm gonna give you the last word on this particular episode, and I think we're gonna come back again in 2 weeks, okay, to talk more about the leverage thing, because there are many other aspects of leverage, because we haven't talked about the fulcrum as the immovable point. You cannot, because Archimedes said, give me a very long and also very stiff lever and a place to put it. Without a place to put this lever, it doesn't work. You need an immovable spot, right? Some immovable place somewhere there to put the lever on, about which everything hinges, right? So that place, sometimes with human interactions, is you being immovable, you being able to walk away, it not being your first rodeo, therefore you not being shaken from your frame, if you will, right? That kind of a thing. So we can talk about more of that in the next show, but I'll give you the last word, sir.
Yeah. Um, Leverage is of critical importance. And if you think that you're going to be able to achieve, uh, you know, reach your full potential, let's say, without leverage, I I don't know what world you're living in. Um, I think there's a sort of romanticization of being able to do everything you're on your own, and not having to interact with systems or other people. And that's just you know I guess you can go out and live in the forest like that, but um, if you're going to be dealing with people and uh, and systems, you're going to have to figure out how to leverage. Um, I do think that whole sort of drive at the bottom, so to speak, the willingness to do all the crap stuff, and doing it with a smile on your face, with a good attitude. You know, I was on uh, I was on here on one of Ike's other shows. I came up from the chat, and I was talking about an experience I had uh, a woman that was working at a store that I go to frequently, a convenience store, and that had a lot of attitude. And yeah, I mean, attitude, it's not necessary. You know, if just having a good attitude and being willing to do the work, and when you see something out of place, go, deal with that thing that's out of place. Simple stuff like that, consistently done, without your hand out, without looking for people to see you. There's a I want to say this last thing. There's a fine line between doing things because you know that people will value and see you doing those things, and that can help you, and sort of doing things with the right sort of motivation. Like you're not necessarily doing it for them. You're doing it to develop something in yourself. There's this there's like a there's a fine line between that and trying to figure out where you need to be, because if you do things sheerly for people to see, then there's not going to be very much substance there. That's a show off. We don't tend to like show offs. But if you do things and you don't uh, and that nobody else knows that you're doing, that maybe that's a problem too, a different kind of problem, but that's a problem also. And yeah, the scripture in the Bible that talks about, the things that you do in secret will be known, and the stuff that you do among everyone. Uh, um, but understand, you don't you there's a lot of stuff to dig through. There's
Yeah.
a lot of stuff to dig
Plus,
through.
there's the other one about your light not being covered. So yeah.
That's right.
Maybe you
So
use that one on Tuesdays, and then maybe on Saturdays you use the other one, and yeah.
yeah, you got to be smart about what you're doing,
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
and you got to use leverage. And whatever leverage you have to use it. That's just what it is.
100%, ladies and gentlemen. And with that, we will be bidding you adieu, good night, so long, farewell, avideze, arrivederci, all that kind of stuff. Okinwe, ekushe, kurile, all that good stuff. But we will be back. We will be back in a couple of weeks to continue this particular topic on leverage. Shout out to Sebastian Ritchie, Ingrid Jarrett, the blind guy, his wife, and their life. Let's not forget about their life, ladies and gentlemen, and Nicer and everyone else in the chat for showing up. We are out of here.